All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Commanders Film Room. You guys can find us every Wednesday, breaking down the all 22, looking at the Commanders film prospects or game breakdowns. Find us on YouTube, find us on X, and give us a follow. I'm your host, George Carmi, joined with my co-host, Mr. Mark Bullock. Mark, how you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing very well, man. It's Wednesday. We're getting towards the end of the week. The weather's getting nice around here in DC. A lot of positive things going forward. Obviously, we just had our draft the past couple weeks. A couple weeks ago, Mark, we're breaking down our prospects. We're looking at Joshua Joseph this week. We're looking at our edge prospect here. We broke down Antonio Williams last week. Definitely give us a follow and watch that over there. Obviously, Mark, we follow the team closely. We've been doing this breakdowns week to week. Washington's defense was rather poor last year, right? Just looking at the actual raw numbers. 32nd overall in yards allowed, 27th overall in points allowed, 20th overall in regarding passing yards, and 30th in rushing yards. Washington went out and tried to, correct this by addressing our edge position, which was probably our weakest position going into the season. They got Odafe Oweh, they got K'Lavon Chaisson, and they already had Dorrance Armstrong in-house. Are you happy with the way they approached this offseason, or do you think they've done enough to kind of build up our defense on the edge class right there?
Yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job. I think it reminds me of last year where Adam Peters seems to target something for his rebuild for the offseason and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So last year it was the offensive tackle position, and even though they had Brandon Coleman as a third-round pick the year before, they weren't feeling sure about that, so they went and traded for Laramie Tunsil, and then they went and drafted Josh Connolly. And that really kind of secured that position
Mm-hmm.
and built up that offensive line. Whereas this year it was kind of flipped to the other side, the edges on the defensive side, and that so we saw them go and sign Odafe Oweh to the big contract, as you said. K'Lavon Chaisson they brought in. They kind of retained Dietrich Wise, brought in Charles Omenihu as guys that if they play a four-man front can play on the edge, but they can also shift inside in a three-man front. So they really addressed it with a lot of different players and a lot of different body types and skill sets. And then you talk about like Leo Chanel and Frankie Louvu are guys that have experience playing on the edge and dropping into coverage and doing some of the different stuff that Durante Jones is probably going to want to do with his defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then they spent a mid-round pick on Joshua Josephs, who I think fits the skill set that they're looking for. I think he's still a little bit raw, as we'll come to some of this, and we'll see just how he fits. But I think the talents and the traits are there for him to be a really good fit for this defense. And yeah, I think it's another piece that doesn't have to start right away because they added so many pieces. You've got Oweh and Chaisson, you've got Armstrong hopefully back healthy as your kind of main three edge guys, and the other guys we talked about as well that could fill in there. So Joseph doesn't have the pressure to come in and be productive right away.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that he can't see the field and be part of the rotation and progress and develop. And then next year, when some of those guys are out of contracts, perhaps he's ready to take a step forward and you don't have to overpay for anyone in a year's time. So I think they've done a good job of stacking up what they needed this year, but also with the addition of Josephs and having Oweh long term, they've stocked up the cupboard a little bit for the future as well.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. That's actually a great perspective, Mark. I guess I got to keep an eye on that moving forward. Adam Peters definitely when he sees a position that's in need, he definitely layers it and kind of addresses it fully, right? We saw that with the linebacking core as well. We saw Leo Chanel and Sonny Styles being added to a slower, developing unit that we needed to upgrade over the offseason. So he hit that pretty hard, but he also developed the edge class or the edge position and put some different players there. And what I like what you said was that it's actually there's like short-term, long-term, and kind of medium kind of fillers for those positions as well, right? We have the Odafe Oweh with a longer contract. We have Dorrance Armstrong who's already here. K'Lavon Chaisson is a one-year option, but he could potentially be re-signed next year. But that's going to be very, very expensive. So having Joshua Joseph in the pipeline is a worthy prospect to kind of roll the dice on because he is a pretty uber athletic player that we're going to talk about today. That being said, does his skill set, does it complement the current group that we have right now? Is it more of the same? What are your thoughts? What are your initial takeaways after watching the film?
Yeah, I think it's something that gives them it does complement them. I think it gives them probably more of the kind of skill set that they were looking for with Durante Jones. And if you look at that Vikings defense and you look at the guys that play on the edge there, um,
Hmm.
Andrew Van Ginkel, it's Dallas Turner, it was Jonathan Greenard, but obviously he's been traded now. And
Hmm.
when you look at those body types, Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel are both kind of 6'3", 264, 240, 245 pounds. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what Josephs is. I think he's 6'3", 242. So he's right in that kind of range. So he's the right athletic profile. And as we'll see in this, he's got some pass rush ability, but he's also got some coverage ability. And that is important for what this defense does. And again, hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that. But we'll start with the pass rush, and we'll start with the traits, because in terms of a pass rusher, he is quite raw. But you'll see here that the traits are there. He needs to be coached up on how to use them. So this is a really nice example of his best trait, which is his length. He's got like over 34-inch arms. He's got this ridiculously long wingspan. He's a very, very long player. He does not use that length particularly well. I do a lot better job of it, but this is an example of how that length can really impact blockers. So here he is lining up outside the right tackle, and he's going to rush against the right tackle. The guy on this side wins as well, but we ignore that. We're focused over here. And as we run this through, you'll see he gets a nice long arm. The tackle comes and jump sets as a little play action pass. So he's thinking, okay, it might be a run. So I'll get that long arm into the tackle, use that length to get his hands inside first. You can see the tackle's kind of struggling to reach him. You can see Chason's got his hand inside and the tackle's hands are on the outside shoulders. And that's when he can then stack him up, extend those elbows, use that length. And you can see here's the tackle's arm. He can't reach Chason. He's sorry, not Chason, Josephs. He's trying to reach him, but he can't reach him because of that arm length. And once he stacked him up, he's able to then peek into the backfield. You can see him just kind of leaning and peeking into the backfield and saying, oh, this isn't a run, it's a play action. I can transition into pass rush mode. And what he does is he then drops his hands, but he drops them violently, effectively pulling this tackle off balance. You can see the tackle's already kind of leaning into this block because of the length issue. He's trying to reach and he can't reach him, so he's having to lean forward, and you can see how his weight is kind of leaning forward over his feet rather than staying balanced, sitting over his feet. So he's leaning forward, and Joseph just yanks that chest down. You can see he violently pulls him down, drags him off balance, and rips past him into the backfield. Now, this guy wins off the edge as well and lands a nice big sack to knock the ball out. But Joseph does a nice job realizing, hey, that ball came out, and he goes and picks it up. And these guys think the play is done, but Joseph doesn't give up on it, and he runs it all the way back, and then they do rule it a touchdown. So that's an example of the length that he has. Talks about the 34-inch arms. I think it's like 34.5-inch arms, possibly. It's really long, super long wingspan. So that can really be an issue for tackles. And when he uses it, as we saw there, to keep guys off of him, it's really tough for them to deal with him. I don't think he does a particularly good job of using that, and we'll come to that. But sorry, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quickly. So yeah, I'm glad we're going to talk about that, because I think Joseph is calling card is that he looks the part, right? I'm looking at his stats. He's 6'3" and 1/8, 242 pounds, but he's renowned for those 84-inch wingspan, as those like NBA, wing player type of wingspan. So his length is talked about often, and I'm glad you're pointing that out, and I'm glad to see that. I thought that last part was pretty impressive, but I do want to see him leverage that more so moving forward. And then looking at Antonio, we said, are you guys talking about Katron Allen? We're actually going to do that on the second half of the show, so definitely stay tuned.
Yep. So yeah, that play was just to showcase what the length can do if he gets it right, and we'll see shortly that he doesn't get it right very often, and that's something Washington will need to coach up. But in terms of other pass rush stuff that he does well, he's got a really nice kind of what I'm calling a Euro step kind of rush, where he comes up off the line of scrimmage, kind of gives a hard jab step inside to stop the tackle's feet, but then immediately jumps back outside to get the edge. And as I say, the whole idea is the tackle is kind of sliding outside to try to deal with his first step. He's got a really nice first step, so the tackle's trying to get outside to cut that off. And then when he jabs hard inside, that's going to stop the tackle's feet and make him try to work back inside and protect that inside rush. and that's when he's going to be able to dart back outside. I'm just going to let this run through before once without just pausing it, so you'll see he comes off the ball, jabs inside, and then bursts back to the edge. So I'll let it run through just to show the whole move. Jab step, back inside, goes and beats the quarterback, goes and gets the quarterback and knocks the ball out. So we'll bring it back and we'll run it through once more. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to ask you a quick question. So everything that I've read and learned so far, I'm glad we're doing the film break. This is my first true exposure to him. I've read that he has an excellent first step, and I heard that he's an excellent run defender, believe it or not. Like, you would think he's more of a sleek pass rusher by the way he's built and the way he's talked about. But I heard right now he's probably a better run defender than pass rusher. Like, that's what I've been hearing. Do you agree with that so far? And what are your thoughts?
I think he is a good run defender. I think he's a fairly well-rounded prospect. I think the pass rush is probably the most raw. I think when you see when he's defending the run, guys are coming at him. He naturally uses his length a little bit better. We'll see a little bit of that as well. And that length is a real big asset that he, as I say, as a pass rusher, he doesn't use enough. And as we saw on that previous one, that was a play where it was a play action pass. So initially he read run, and that's why he kind of paused, let the guy come to him, and used his length better. Whereas when he's rushing the passer, he's going forward, the guys are going backwards, so he's kind of he doesn't engage and use his length as well as he should do. But so on this rush, you'll see that first step quickness. He comes off the snap quickly, and he gets these tackles, worried about that outside rush, and then he's quite a fluid athlete as well. So he gives that jab step inside, and you can see how this tackle stops his feet and starts shuffling this foot back inside rather than keep shuffling outside. And you see that back foot drops back, but this foot stays anchored, and then he's able to burst back outside using that fluidity. And the tackle then can't keep moving this feet because this foot's moving backwards, so he can't move both at the same time. And so he has to kind of reach out with his arm. And I keep going to say chase on. Joseph's gets his hand up and gets a really good placement here, actually. He gets on the wrist of the tackle, and that's able to control that. I think he can do a little bit better job lifting that hand off of him and really clearing it because he's got such good placement there. But he does manage to he ends up knocking it down with the other hand, and he gets it off of him. And then that clears that pass to the edge, and you can see that tackle's really struggling. Again, his feet aren't anywhere near where they need to be for that kind of outside speed rush, and that was because of that Euro step rush. And then he gets by. And one important thing to notice with Joseph's is he gets his hand on the football a lot. He doesn't always finish the play with a sack, but if it's a sack fumble, it still counts as a sack. But he does get his hand on the football or the throwing arm and disrupts throws quite a lot. And you can see here, he could just dive and go for the sack, but instead he's reaching out and trying to knock this ball out. And he does. He hits that ball just as the quarterback's trying to throw the ball, and that causes it to come out. Unfortunately, the tackle is able to recover it. And typically when a tackle recovers a fumble, it's because they've been beaten pretty easily by the edge rusher. So that was a good sign. So that was his one Euro step. This is another Euro step rush where, again, he really beats the tackle, but I think it's the guard ends up helping him out. Just to show that it's not a one-time thing. There's that hard jab inside. You get this tackle that was really worried about the speed. You can see how much further outside he's gotten. But then again, this foot has to come back to protect that inside. And you can see where his other foot goes. He's got it completely off balance, not expecting that burst back outside. And that's easy for him to skip by him. Now he kind of gets tripped up here. You can see that hand's almost going to that knee, trying to trip him up and stop that. He gets tripped up, and the guard ends up coming out to help out as well. But it's just to show that Euro step move that he has is quite effective when he gets it right, and this quarterback goes and throws an interception. But so that's a couple of examples of what he can do as a pass rusher. When he gets his length right, when he gets his first step right, he's got that nice little Euro step move as one of his little go-to moves that can work quite well.
Mark, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah,
you don't mind. So you talked about Euro step. You used about like sporadic success with his length. Does he have a pretty refined toolkit right now, or is he kind of relying on his natural ability? You said he's
it's more relying on natural ability. And you'll see this one here. This is him going up against Monroe Freeling, who I think was the first round pick in the draft.
He was.
So this is really good standard of competition. And what you'll see here is when you get the higher levels of competition, these are guys that are more capable of matching his speed. As we talked about, he has a good first step, but when you get higher level draft picks, these guys are typically really good athletes too, and they're able to match that speed. And so what he has to do is adjust his rush. So you'll see here, Freeling gets a really good jump off the snap. and he's out of his stance super quick. Josephs was out of his stance super quick, and when you compare him to the other guys, he's the furthest along. But Freeling's also the furthest guy back compared to the rest of the offensive linemen. So he gets a really good jump. And you can tell at this point that he's going to be able to cut off that speed that from the angle that Josephs is rushing on. So Josephs recognized that, and he does a nice job of going, okay, I'm not going to get that speed rush because Freeling has got that speed rush countered. There's also this threat of this running back potentially chipping. So I'm not going to win on the edge with speed. So I need to adjust. So what does he do? He goes to speed to power. So he converts, rather than just rushing up the edge, he runs straight at the chest of the tackle, which is the right thing to do in this situation. So he extends his hands out, and again, with his length, he's able to get his hands on the chest of Freeling, which is a good start. That's exactly what you want him to be able to do, right? But Freeling does a nice job of getting himself low. You can see he's got his pad level lower, and he's trying to get his hands underneath to kind of stall out that power move, and he kind of gets successful with it. What you'd like to see here is you'd like to see Josephs use his length better by, he got his hands on first because of his length, but he doesn't then lock out his elbows and drive his feet and start driving the guy backwards. He allows his elbows to bend and kind of gets really close to Freeling, and that's where Freeling is going to overpower him because he's 300 odd pounds, whereas he's only 240, right? So that's where you want him to use his length to extend those arms out so that Freeling can't reach him, and that's when you can get low and drive him backwards. But Freeling is able to kind of hold him close, and he's not using that length. So as we talked about, doesn't use his length particularly well.
Do you think that's a lack of strength, Mark? Do you think that's he's trying to like maybe generate power, trying to punch into Freeling, but he's not necessarily getting him? Like, I see what you're saying. Like,
not necessarily. It's more technical than lack of strength. I think there is some decent strength there. I think it's more technical. So he doesn't use that length particularly well here. Now, what he does do well here is he identifies once he gets to this point, the running backs cleared him. He's no longer chipping. And once he started getting into his chest, he knows that Freeling's going to stop his feet, and he's going to try to widen them to avoid that power driving him backwards. He's going to kind of, what tackles typically do is they what's called drop anchor, where they widen their feet, their hips go low, and they try to get low and redirect a power rush upwards to stop that momentum. So what that does is that opens a path up to the edge, so he can try to burst to the edge again. And the way to get that path to the edge, he needs to clear this outside arm from Freeling, and he does the right thing here, where he tries to chop this arm to clear it, to give himself that path. But he does lack the power and the technique when he does this. So you can see he's kind of just tapping at the arm and kind of shoving it. He gives it a little tap and a little shove, and eventually gets it clear, and that's when he's able to cause Freeling to start a lunge at him. He clears that path to the edge, and that's when he's able to get through and go get the sack, and again forces the ball out, which they recover.
He has an eye for the ball. He does.
Exactly. But we just run this back, and you'll see, I'll just pause it just before the moment of contact and just watch his outside arm, how he kind of just taps at Freeling's arm. He doesn't chop it aggressively. It's kind of just a light tap and a shove, and it does work eventually, but it's not as aggressive and as violent and as physical as you'd like to see. And it just lacks the technique that it could have. So you see, he just kind of gives it a little tap and a little shove, and he eventually gets through, and it still works, but it could be more technically sound. So that shows that he can still be an effective rusher even without great technique. Again, Freeling was a first-round pick, but it's something that when you watch more and more, you see that he does kind of lack the technique. He doesn't make use of his traits like his length. He doesn't have really good hand fighting techniques, and you'll see that on this next few reps. Do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, there's one thing that I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if you caught it while watching the film, but from what I understood, the way Tennessee deployed their defensive end and their edge rusher was more of a committee approach, right? It was like more of like different waves, almost like he had 30% of the total snaps of the pass rush. I was wondering if like maybe that was a lack of exposure, lack of playing time. Maybe, I mean, obviously you want to see his development as well, but I think that might be a potential cause of it.
Sure. Yeah, they definitely had a rotation there, didn't they? They were. It kind of stopped any individual rusher from really getting into a ton of different grooves and working a tackle over, setting up moves and with one move, and on the next rush doing this, because they were rotating out quite frequently. But you still see a lack of technique overall. So this play is a good example of it. He's working against the left tackle again here, and he again gets quite tight into him. And when he gets tight into him, he doesn't use his length, and so you can see the tackle ends up getting his hands on his chest. And when he has the length that he has, especially over a kind of bigger, stouter tackle like this, he probably should be able to extend his arms and keep the tackle off of him. But he gets too close into him, and the tackle's able to get his hands into Joseph's chest. And at this point, he lacks the technique and the nous to clear those hands and get himself off of this block and find another way to win. So once those hands are on and they're locked on, he kind of fights through, but he doesn't really have any kind of aggressive swipe or chop or kind of ripping those hands off and finding a way to break through, and he kind of gets locked up. Another example here against Alabama, another decent tackle that he's going against here. And you see again, he kind of gets into the guy, and the tackle's able to get his hands on him. And at that point, I think he even tries a slight chop with his outside arm here, but it doesn't have any technique. There's no like, I'm aiming for the elbow, where there's a nerve ending that might make that hand come off, or I'm going for the wrist, where that's the kind of weak point that if you break that wrist down, that then his grip comes off, right? He's not aiming for a specific point. He's just kind of loosely flailing his arm, and he kind of slowly chops at it, and he doesn't really get through. He tries to rip through, and the tackle just keeps him locked up the entire time. So he kind of struggles with his length, not with his length. He struggles with his technique, and I think a lot of that could be remedied by learning some different rushes where he uses his length to keep guys off of him. If he can keep guys off of him, he doesn't have to do the hand fighting techniques quite so much. So I would expect, Commander's coaching staff, they get hold of him and they say, okay, here's a long arm rush. You use that length. Here's how we lock out our elbows and make sure we're holding that guy way off of you so that he can't get into your chest, because then you're fine. And then, learn the kind of swipes, the chops, the cross chops, as I say, the side swipes, the individual hand swipes and the two hand swipes. So that's the stuff that he can learn to develop over time. But so he's quite raw technically, but the traits are there.
Exactly. No, that's all I'm going to say. I think essentially you hit the nail on the head. Like, as a fifth round as a fifth round pick, we should have a measured expectations for what he's going to be, because obviously there's going to be some upside, but there's also going to be some work that you want to develop and kind of work your way through. He clearly has athletic traits, and he clearly has upside with his athletic ability, but we're missing the technique there. And hopefully with time he can develop that. I'm curious though, are you high on him? It seems like you have a lot of critiques in regard to what he has. I don't know if you're like, if that's just the natural progression of him being a fifth round pick, or what are your thoughts on him altogether?
No, I actually came away quite high on him. I wasn't expecting too much, and I came away quite high on him. I do think it's going to take him some time to refine those techniques. I do think there are aspects that he can do quite well straight away, and I think I'm willing to bet on him because the traits are there, and as we'll see on this play, the kind of the motor is there and the effort is there, and that speaks to a character that is willing to try to do the work to develop. I'm guessing he just didn't quite get the right coaching, or because, as you talked about, that rotation at Tennessee, he didn't get enough reps or whatever. So hopefully that will stand him in good stead. And as we see here, that the point I want to point out in this rep is the motor, the effort, and he's working off the edge against the right tackle here. And in the end, the quarterback's going to end up scrambling off to the left-hand side, and a lot of edge rushers trying to chase that guy down will give up on that rush towards the end, and they'll feel the tiredness, and they'll pull up and stop running hard and let the quarterbacks run it away out of bounds for a couple of yards or throw the ball away. He does not give up on this rush at all. So you'll see it here. We'll get into the rush. He kind of gets into the hands of the guy, and he kind of gets to the edge quite nicely, again, because of that first step quickness. And that's what causes the quarterback to be like, okay, I need to take off here. But when the quarterback starts running away from him, again, you see a lot of defensive ends or edge rushers in this situation. They try to chase it down, but once they get kind of outside the tackle box with the hash marks, it's kind of, okay, we'll pull up and he's going to get away from me. I'm not going to get this. But you see really good effort constantly from him here. And this shows up regularly. There's a lot of heads up plays, as we kind of saw earlier, where He noticed the whistle wasn't gone. He's noticed the ball was out on that first play that we looked at, and he picked it up and he ran it all the way back. A lot of guys, again, wouldn't put that effort in. You see it here. He goes and chases that guy down, and he knocks that ball out as the quarterback's trying to throw the ball. And again, we'll see. I'll stop it just before he gets to that, because again, a lot of guys will not make this play, but again, because of that length and that eye for the ball, he can see that quarterback's trying to turn him and make that throw, and he knocks the ball out there. He gets that arm on that throwing arm, and that causes the ball to come loose before that throw is executed. And this is actually ruled a fumble, which Tennessee recovers. So it's a really great high effort, high motor play, which again is a really big trait of his. So when you talk about the raw traits, the length, the first step quickness, and you combine that with the motor and the effort, you think that he's a guy that you're willing to bet on, that he might take a year or two to develop, but he could become a decent player. Not necessarily like a 20-sack a season guy, right? But a guy that could be a good part of your rotation for a good while. One of those kind of good guys in the roster.
And that's what you're looking for with the 5th round pick. And what I like seeing so far with the Clips, Mark, is you hit up at you've talked about the high motor. I like the fact that we've seen 3 plays where he's generated turnovers or knocked the ball out of the quarterback's hands. And for a defense that preaches ball is life and just get the ball and turnovers, we've been seeing a lack of that here in DC for quite some time. So it's nice to see someone that could potentially, maybe in a year or so, start generating some more turnovers for us.
Absolutely. That was another thing. He did have that eye for the football. And it wasn't just, I'm just going to sack the quarterback. It was, I'm going to try to hit that throwing arm and knock that ball out. So, and you know, the length plays into that as well, being able to reach that ball and knock it out rather than just having to wrap up a guy. That all is part of it. So that's kind of Joseph's as a pass rusher, but there's more to his game that makes me think he's a good fit with what they want to do with Durante Jones. Obviously, we're assuming that Durante Jones is going to be trying to install his version of what the Vikings and Brian Flores did, which is where Jones just came from. And in that defense, they do a lot of kind of blitzes and stunts and stuff where they have this edge rusher drop off into coverage. With the Vikings, this is Andrew Van Ginkel. Now, I don't want to say Joseph is Andrew Van Ginkel, so that's too much pressure to put on the 5th round pick. But you see the traits to be able to drop off into coverage, and he does this a fair amount. So what we got here is we've got I think it's a fire zone blitz. So they've got, I think both of these guys join the rush on this side, and to enable those guys to join that rush, Joseph drops off into coverage on the other end. And initially, he's going to work up the seam with this tight end, but he's going to peel off because he's in an underneath zone. It's going to be a 3 deep, 3 under fire zone. And what he's going to do is when he initially, as I say, runs up the seam with this tight end, he's going to pass that guy off to the guys in the secondary, and he's going to notice that he's got another tight end crossing from the other side of the field, and he's going to redirect down to it and take it away. So we'll see it here as he drops off into coverage. You can see both these guys join the rush, which allows him to drop off into coverage, and you get 3 deep, 3 underneath guys, and he's initially carrying that tight end up the seam. You can see the whole time he's looking to the other side of the field, and he can see through that guy, and you can see actually this tight end is coming as a crosser, and he's going to be a threat to my shallow zone over here. So I'm going to peel off, I'm going to redirect down to it, and you can see the quarterback's feeling the pressure from the blitz, but he's going to peel off and match this shallow cross from the tight end, and that's not really an option for the quarterback. He's got to look at the running back again because of the blitz. So that's just showing the ability to drop off into coverage and not just carry one, but have an idea of, okay, I'm looking at the other side of the field while I'm carrying this tight end up the seam. I can see there's another threat to my zone. I can redirect, peel off, and pick that up. So that's a nice little identifier.
That's good to know. I didn't see that he had that. I didn't know he had that in his arsenal, so it's good to see that in there.
Yeah, and this just kind of shows again this is a very similar kind of pressure to what you would see from the Vikings, where again he's dropping off into coverage, and you're going to get, I think this is a corner or a safety blitzing and a linebacker blitzing off the other side. So it's a 5-man rush. It's still a 5-man blitz, but you're getting the safe kind of zone coverage behind it. And what you're going to get is you're going to get this safety or nickel player. He's going to come free up the middle, and that's what's going to pressure the quarterback. The running back kind of gets lost in the protection as well. He kind of gets caught up in the blitz trying to pick up different guys. and he comes out late and the quarterback tries to get the throws off to him, and they bat that down. They need to get an interception and a turnover off of it. So that kind of shows the kind of pressure, and to be able to do those type of pressures, you need guys on the edge that can drop off into coverage. So that's one example, but just to show that it wasn't a one-off, here's another one. So this time I think they only go with a 3-man rush, or they might send a linebacker as a fourth guy, but essentially Josephs is going to peel off into coverage. He's going to drop off into coverage. What he's going to feel is he's going to feel this outside receiver running a shallow cross, and a lot of times these edge rushers, they'll just drop back into their zone coverage. They'll hit their zone, and then they'll look at the quarterback. They won't think of anything about what's going on out here. They're not typical coverage players. They're not aware of that kind of thing. But what you're going to see is as soon as he starts to drop into coverage, he's going to look to these receivers rather than the quarterback. And he's going to feel this shallow cross. And what he's going to do is wall it off. He's going to get in the way of it, use his bigger frame to kind of force that guy into him and off his path and delay him running that shallow cross. And that's going to have a big impact on the play. So we'll run this through. You'll see he peels off into coverage, and it's, I'm getting into this guy. I'm going to wall him off. I'm going to stop him from running his original path. It's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, so this contact is allowed. Makes good contact and delays him getting into his route. Now you can see this quarterback gets to the top of his drop, and he's reading stuff over here, but he doesn't find anything he likes. And he's starting to get a little bit antsy. He's starting to hitch step into the pocket, starting to feel a couple little pressures coming in his way, and he starts to work back to this shallow cross, which at this point should be probably around about here, and he could just dump it off. But because he's walled him off and he's delayed him, he's really late in getting to where he's meant to be. So that quarterback's looking for, where is my receiver that's meant to be here? Oh, he's back here. I can't throw this right now. He tries to buy time to get back to it, but by the time he kind of works back inside and the receiver is able to clear past Josephs, he's suddenly got all this pressure around him and he gets sacked. So that's, again, what having that kind of edge rusher that can drop off into coverage can do for the pass rush and the kind of the scheme, is being able to take away that guy and not just sit into a zone coverage and let the quarterback do whatever. It's actively identify, okay, this guy's running a shallow cross. I can get in his way. I can wall him off. I can delay him from getting into his route. And that's going to lead to my teammates having more time to be able to get a sack. So that's important. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, I imagine he's not going to live in that world, correct? That's just something in his arsenal that he could potentially use, but he's not going to be doing that predominantly.
Yeah, he's not going to be doing, dropping off into coverage 30 times a game, right? It's going to be 4 or 5 times a game tops, right? So it's just the difference of, we've seen Owe and Chason are both two really athletic guys that they've signed that can drop off into coverage every now and again. Again, you don't want them doing it constantly. You want them to be able to do it so that you can, on one play, you could have one edge rusher drop off into coverage and overload the one side, and on the next play you could flip it and have the other edge rusher jump off and overload the other side.
Wrinkles. Yeah, exactly. Wrinkles out there.
It's being able to show so many different looks. And when you drop those guys off into coverage, a lot of the time you see edge rushers kind of just sink into a spot and not really understand what they're doing in coverage. And OA showed a little bit more understanding of being able to identify those different routes and drop into coverage and kind of impact those routes a little bit more, which is good. But you've also just signed him to a $100 million contract where you want him rushing the passer more often. Joseph feels like a guy that, if you're developing him a little bit more, in a year or two's time, he's going to have a little bit more of an understanding of, we can drop him off into coverage a little bit more frequently. Not as much as Andrew Van Ginkel does necessarily, but more towards Van Ginkel than like Jonathan Greenard with the Vikings. He was a guy that they rushed more often than not. So that's kind of what you're looking for, is a guy that can do that coverage a little bit more to a little bit higher standard, that lets you do these type of blitzes. And it's something that I thought maybe they might try to do with Frankie Louvu or Leo Chanel, where they put them on the edge and they drop them off into coverage. But we saw, I can't remember the guy's name now. It was a few years ago now. They had Washington had an edge rusher.
Fowler? Was it Dante Fowler?
No, it was before. It was even before Rivera's time, I think.
Wow.
So it was a while ago now. But they had an edge rusher that was a linebacker in college and converted to the edge. and he kind of didn't offer much as a pass rusher, but he could drop off into coverage. In the first couple of games he played, that was an effective scheme for them. But after a while, teams started realizing this guy's actually not really a threat to rush the passer. And that would be the thing if you're lining up Luvu or Chanel on the edge. They are decent blitzers, but they're not good pass rushers against offensive linemen. So if you're putting them on the edge to be that drop into coverage guy, they're just going to treat them as a drop into coverage guy. They're not going to worry about sliding the protection that way.
There's no threat. Yeah.
Josephs is a guy that can be a legitimate threat as a pass rusher if he develops his pass rush ability. And that's going to make teams have to respect him and have to be able to slide protection his way. And that's when you can drop him off into coverage, overload the other side, and beat the protection that way. So that's the potential there. This is just one more play of him in coverage that I thought was really impressive. You've got a running back running a little choice route here. He's going to stem outside, open up towards the numbers, and he's going to have the option to be able to either break it off outside or most ideally break inside across his face. And Joseph does a really nice job here. He peels off the edge, matches this choice route, and he kind of stays square, stays patient. A lot of linebackers and edge rushers at this point would be kind of worried, and you can see the linebacker behind him is rushing outside and worried, and the linebacker would get beaten across his face here. But Joseph does a really nice job staying square, and as soon as this guy breaks inside, it's hands on, I'm staying with you, this is not an option for you. The quarterback's going to have to go with a different throw, and the quarterback goes with a different throw, and it's a much more difficult throw. Now, that is a superb throw.
Jeez, it's okay.
Wow. Hold on to. So that's a very good throw, but that's a much more difficult throw to have to make, right? So that's the coverage upside that he does have. I think there's a legitimate coverage upside that he has that they could tap into, especially in this defense. If Daronte Jones stays around for a few years and they're able to build up and develop him up, I think he could become. I don't want to say Andrew Van Ginkel because that's unfair expectations for him, but I think he's someone that could fit that role in this defense.
Mark, how far away is he for you? Is he going to be someone that could contribute week 1, week 8 next year? Like, do you think of it as more of a role player right now, more of a couple plays a game, or is he going to address on the? I know, so it's hard to predict. You're not the coach. I'm just kind of thinking like your progression and kind of what your thoughts are right now.
It's hard to predict, but I think he's someone that can be part of the rotation, but it's going to be the bottom end of the rotation. I think he's going to be more for the coverage ability and potentially some of the run ability than the pass rush. I think, as I say, the pass rush is really quite raw, and I think he might be able to beat a tackle with a surprise, suddenly this guy comes in and has a really good first step, or uses that Euro step, and it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and he might win a rep here or there. But if he gets 10, 15, 20 reps against a good NFL left tackle, they're going to be able to shut him down pretty quickly, I think, because his techniques are so raw. So it depends on how quickly he learns like a long arm and some different type of rushes to help keep himself clean. If he can learn that really quickly, then great. But I think he's kind of raw, and it might take him a year or two before he's really up to speed as a rusher. But I think his all-round game can help.
And as we talked about on the top of the show, they don't need him right now anyway. They're actually rather deep right now at the edge position, so maybe potentially throw him in for a couple curveballs here. They're trying to switch it up and see if he latches on in real time, but they don't need him right now as more of a prospect.
Exactly. So we'll just finish off with Joseph with a couple of run plays here. So this was a weird run stunt that they did quite a lot, where it's like you see this stunt quite a lot as in a passing situation where the defensive tackle runs straight upfield at the kind of the inside shoulder of the tackle, and the defensive end loops around inside. You don't see it quite so often when it's a run play or in obvious run situations, but Tennessee did it quite a lot, and this works quite effectively. So they're going to hand this ball off inside, and you're going to see Joseph stunts inside and gets into the left guard, and you're going to see that length. It really comes in handy here, especially against interior players where they are even shorter arms than the exterior players. So you'll see him as he stunts inside here. He comes inside, he gets his hands inside nicely, and then he does use his arm length. This is where you see when it's against when it's on a run play, he uses his length a lot better. And you can see he can stack that guy up. He can get low, get under him, extend those arms, lock out those elbows. And at this point, he's got all the leverage. This guard can't go anywhere, can't do anything. And Josephs can go either way he wants to go. And he's able to peek into the backfield, is able to see that the running back's trying to get into that gap there. And so he's able to just close that gap, drive that guard backwards, peel off of him, and go make the tackles. So again, that length is what Dan Quinn would call his superpower, right? That is what it is. but he doesn't use it frequently. It's kind of frustrating because you're like, you use it, you've got this incredible length, use it, but he doesn't. But hopefully that's something they can tap into. And one more run play we'll look at as we finish up on Joseph's here. This is just a nice jet sweep from a defense of a jet sweep. So he's on the edge there. He's got 2 tight ends, I think, outside of him, and they're going to hand this ball off on a jet sweep. And he just does a really nice job diagnosing it and standing up his guy and peeling off to make the play. A lot of those edge guys at this point, when they see this kind of jet sweep, they'll try to dart inside and be aggressive and miss it, or they won't anticipate the jet sweep handoff at all. But he does a really nice job of seeing, hey, both these tight ends are peeling off. They're not blocking inside like the rest of these guys on the run play. They're peeling off, and that is an alert to him that, okay, this is actually a jet sweep. Both of these guys are peeling off, so I need to get up into them, stack him up, and shed him pretty quickly and get inside and go make that tackle, blowing up that jet sweep. So
that's a positive. So a couple of the plays that you showed so far, he definitely has some spatial awareness, whether it's in a flat coverage or in the run defense, and he also has an eye for the ball as well. So that's one area of growth, one area to kind of build upon moving forward. It's awesome.
Yep. So that was kind of Joseph's. I think that kind of sums him up pretty well. He's a pretty solid run defender. He's pretty solid in coverage. I think there's pretty good upside for him in coverage. And I think there's really good upside for him as a pass rusher, but he's very, very raw technically. He doesn't make use of his length and his traits as well as he could do. But the traits are there. The effort is there. So hopefully he's someone that, they get him in their building and they get him coached up and they teach him a few of those different techniques, and they start teaching him, pass rush sequencing and how to set up tackles and how to make use of, as we talked about, the length, and he can start being a real problem for guys. But that might take a year or two before we start seeing the results of that as a pass rusher. Early on, as we talked about, he could be kind of a rotational, bottom end of the rotation, kind of here there play and make some nice plays. Could be someone that can be effective in coverage fairly early, I think, and be solid on the edge as a run defender. So I think he can be part of the rotation. I don't think he's someone that you have to. What was it, Kane Madrano last year, where he kind of sat on the bench the entire year? I don't think he has to be that. I think he can be someone that can be on the field. But he does need to work on his pass rush technique to really be able to tap into the potential that he does have.
And then more kind of a off mark kind of question. So where do they all kind of fit in right now? So I think when I envisioned a 3-4, I kind of envisioned like Leo Chanel and Sonny Styles on the inside, maybe Frankie Luvu, maybe Jordan McGee. I don't know if he's actually going to take the field as an outside linebacker. We do have Dafe Owe and Chase Sun as well. How do they all factor in? What's your vision of the defense right now? And where will they all kind of slot in? And in May, I know we're in May right now, but where do you see things going?
I still think it will be a 3-4 for the most part. I think they have the flexibility to go with a 4-3 if they want to, and that's where they could play Styles as the middle linebacker, and you could play Luvu and Chanel either side of him, and those guys could then rotate down to the edge if you want to get into different looks. So that might be a package that they do go into now that they've got Styles, but I think they will still be primarily a 3-4. And I think you'll see Saddle as your nose tackle. You'll see Payne and Kinlaw and Johnny Newton kind of rotate as the 3-4 defensive ends that are kind of more, inside shoulder of the tackle and more 3-tech, maybe even outside shoulder of the guard if they're being very aggressive. And then you'll have your 2 outside linebackers on the edge, and those will be probably Armstrong and Owe with Chase on rotating in a fair bit. And then Joseph's could be part of that rotation as well, but again, it's going to be quite limited number of snaps, I would think, unless if he takes to coaching really well, then great. But I think that's what it'll be. And then on the inside it'll be probably Styles and Chanel, I would think, but Luvu I think would get rotated in a fair amount. It'll be quite interesting because I know they're quite high on Jordan McGee still, so McGee will push Styles, but I think Styles will beat out McGee as the Mike, and then Chanel should beat out Luvu as whether they call it Sam or Will, whatever they want to call it, as the second inside linebacker. But as I say, if they want to get into a 4-3, then they could get both Chanel and Luvu on the field at the same time. But I think they will stick to a 3-4 for the most part. And
you think Armstrong will beat out Chason pretty easily? I was kind of surprised. For me, I kind of feel like Chason will be ahead of him, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, well, it depends on the injury, obviously, and how he comes back
Mhm.
from his injury. I believe the last report I saw was that he was scheduled to be kind of back in time for training camp, and if that's good, if that's true, then great.
Mhm.
I think he's a better player.
Mhm.
Not that Jason's a bad player, but I think Armstrong's a more well-rounded player, and I think Armstrong is someone that has that ability to drop into coverage as well as we kind of pointed out how important that is in this scheme. So I think he's someone that has that ability to do that too. And I think he's a more well-rounded player against the run. I think he's probably still a better pass rusher than Jason as well. I think Jason's a good player. I just think Armstrong's a really good player. And we saw last year he's really developed and kicked on as a pass rusher
Mhm.
without a huge amount of help on the other side. So I would, assuming he's healthy, I think it would be Armstrong would be the next guy.
All right.
Do we want to jump into Katron Allen, or do we want to save him for next week?
I'm up for it. I'm
Yeah.
interested. Why not? Let's go
Cool.
for it.
So we'll jump through Allen fairly quickly because I think he's fairly. I think everyone kind of has a pretty understanding of what he is.
Mhm.
He's a different type of runner. He's not the kind of explosive home run threat that Bill is, but he's a natural complement. A lot of people compared him to Chris Rodriguez, and I can kind of see that. Yeah, he's a kind of shorter, stouter back with a lot more power, and you'll see that on this play. This is a 3rd and 1 situation. Short yardage situation is what he's going to be really good at. What you're going to have here is they kind of ran up to the line of scrimmage to try to snap this ball quickly. So you can see the defensive line are all kind of trying to get themselves set. And what's actually going to happen is the downside of trying to get lined up quickly is you don't always get everything targeted properly. And this linebacker here, I think he was a 4th round pick of the Colts. He comes up free in the gap, and he's going to meet Allen head on, and Allen's going to run right through him, as you'll see here. Comes up free, you can see he's right in the gap here, and Allen's going to see him, and it's going to be like, well, I could try to bounce this way, but I've just got to try to pick up that yard. I'm just going to run him head on. I'm going to thump him over, run him over, and I'm going to go pick up that 1 yard and move the chains, and that kind of sums him up almost. But you see the power, and you see the ability to fall forward there, the ability to keep low, get his pads low, and run over guys and really thump into them and pick up the yard or two that he needs in those short yarded situations. The falling forward is a really, really good trait of his. You see it constantly. You'll see it on basically every run that I show here. But this one I thought was worth looking at. This is Sonny Styles here, right? So Washington's 1st round pick. And we're going to run a little inside run. And you're going to have this defensive tackle is going to stunt inside. And so Allen's going to want to attack inside, but when that guy stunts inside, he's going to have to bounce it slightly outside. And Styles is going to be there to fill in the hole. And Styles is a very good tackler. He typically tackles guys pretty efficiently and brings them down around the line of scrimmage. He's going to make contact around about the line of scrimmage, but you're going to see Allen fights through that contact and manages to fall forward. And you'll see it here as we run this through. You'll see he wants to run this inside. Styles is kind of sitting back, watching this sifting tight end coming back. And he starts to bounce this back, but he runs into Sonny Styles. He does a nice job of getting himself low, and he's able to run through that initial point of contact. Now, Styles does a good job of holding on and not having the tackle broken completely. But he's able to kind of fall forward, keep himself balanced, even though Styles is wrapping up his legs and bringing him down. He's able to fall forward. And when Styles should have been able to make that tackle at the line of scrimmage, this turned out to be a 4-yard gain, right? So being able to fall forward is a really big trait of his. He's able to fight through contact and fall forward and maximize every single gain. It's one of those backs where it's like, oh, I've made a tackle for a 1-yard loss. Actually, no, I've fallen forward and I've got 2 yards, and it's a positive gain, and they keep head of the chains. Another short yardage situation here, again against Ohio State. It's a goal line run. I think it might have been 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 possibly. He's trying to run inside for the touchdown. Obviously, you got Sonny Styles is out here on the edge, so he's got to protect the edge, so he can't just immediately crash down. But you got Caleb Downs here, who's going to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more assertive in trying to make this play. And you're going to see again, he's just going to come through, take that hand off. He's going to fight through that contact from Caleb Downs. Downs goes low and tries to land that hit, but he just fights through it. Even though Downs gets underneath his pad level, he just fights through it and works through that big pile, gets himself over that pile, falls over the end zone line and gets in for the touchdown. So another quite impressive short yardage play.
Against
So
two first rounders in the NFL draft.
yeah,
So those are
exactly.
pretty impressive. Yeah, that's a good talent there.
So the power, the strength, and the ability to fall forward are quite obvious strengths for him. And I think he has a role right away as a short yardage back. Obviously in goal line situations, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, as we just saw. But to say he's only that would be kind of doing him a disservice. I think he's got some other really nice traits in his game, and we see one of those here, which is contact balance. He has a really nice job. He is kind of a little bit of a shorter back. I think he's 5'11", and he's kind of a stouter back, and he's got really thick hips and thighs and legs, which enables him to kind of keep himself balanced through contact. And what you're going to see here is this is a little inside zone run from the gun, and you're going to have this this defensive tackle is going to beat the guard across his face, and he's going to actually, I think he beats the tackle across his face. I think the guard goes off elsewhere, and he's going to be in the gap that Allen wants to run in, and he stretches out with his arm, and he tries to make this play. He'll run it through. It's the tackle he's working through. So he wants to run this more outside to the play side, but this defensive tackle is kind of in that first gap, so he can't go that way. So he's got to try to cut this back. Now, a lot of the times you would see these runs be cut back behind this left tackle into this gap. But you can see that linebacker is just scraping over the top of this and is there ready to kind of loop around and make that tackle. This guy is looking out here to block someone else. He's not wrapping around for this linebacker. So if he cuts this back further, this linebacker is going to be there to make the tackle. So instead, he decides to keep this play side, and he decides to try to run through this small hole. And this defensive tackle is able to reach out his arms like, I'm closing that hole. You're not getting through here. But Allen runs right through that arm tackle of it. Again, this is a kind of 300-pound plus defensive tackle. So yes, it's an arm tackle, but it's not a 200-pound safety arm tackle. It's a 300-pound defensive lineman arm tackle. He runs right through it, keeps himself balanced, works up into the secondary, and picks up a good gain. So the contact balance is something that's really impressive. This one's also a decent example of contact balance, but it's also a really good example of his feel for zone runs. And we've heard about how this scheme with David Blau is anticipated to be a little bit more of a zone run scheme rather than the kind of gap stuff that they have been doing. Now they could be a little bit more gap than we realize, but we're anticipating them to be a bit more of a zone scheme. And Allen has a good feel for that. Now, I think Chris Rodriguez also had a really good feel for zone runs, and I thought that he'd be a good fit, and they let him go. But Allen has a good feel for it as well, and you'll see that here. So this is a wide zone scheme from the gun. And what the whole idea is, you're trying to get the whole defense kind of running out to the edge, try to set up a big cutback, create a hole somewhere between, more than likely, the two defensive tackles is where you're trying to create the hole between, to try to create that cutback lane. So what we're going to see here is as he presses this run to the play side, you're going to see this defensive tackle stunts underneath the left guard, while the other defensive tackle is trying to get into the B gap between the guard and the right tackle. So that's going to create quite a big gap in that offensive line, and the defensive line as well. And that puts Sonny Styles in a really tough situation where he's got the center climbing up to him, and he's got to try to cover both gaps because he's not got anyone over here looping over here. Arvell Reese could be doing that, but he's kind of protecting the edge in any kind of bootleg or quarterback keeping option. So that leaves Styles in this position where he's got to try to cover two gaps, which is almost impossible to do, right? So as we press this run to the play side, Styles is like, okay, well, he's pressing it to the play side. I've got to get into that A gap and cover that gap and force this to cut back and hope that Reese or someone is able to loop back around it. But what that means is he's left the backside A gap, which is the correct decision from Styles, but that leaves that gap open. And you can see this feel from Allen really well here. So he presses this as long as he can. He tries to get as far to the outside as he can to force that commitment from Styles to fill that gap and create that gap to open on the backside. This defensive tackle comes underneath that block and tries to reach him. But again, he does a nice job of fighting through that contact, finding the balance and having the feel to make that cut right off the backside of that center into that gap that was open. And again, he fights through contact and he falls forward and he picks up the most amount of yards as he can. So that was a really nice feel for a zone play. Here's another example of a zone scheme, and this one is quite resembling of a 2012 Washington offense, where they're in the pistol, and they have kind of it looks like it's a read option play. It's actually a fake read option play, but you're going to see all the linemen are blocking to the left on an inside zone scheme, but the quarterback's going to open up to the right like he's going to be reading this edge defender. This tight end, in his own read, he would fake blocking him and arc around and block this guy, but he actually just ends up blocking him because it's just a handoff inside. It's just made to look like a zone read play. So it's just going to be an inside zone, and when you get to the mesh point, while it's in pistol, once you get to the mesh point of the handoff, at this point it looks like it's just a gun inside zone run where he's just been slightly offset and takes the handoff there, right? And so what you see on these inside zone schemes, they're meant to press the run to the play side, but more often than not on these inside zone schemes, you see them cut back pretty early on and try to hit behind the tackle, or sometimes even behind the tight end. But that's not happening here with the guy on the edge. He's trying to hit behind the tackle when you run these inside zone schemes. Now, obviously, there's this initial gap that opens up here, and that's why he presses that to the play side. But that gap gets shut, and he thinks about cutting this run back. But you can feel that this guy is looping inside and ready to cut that. We've got this secondary defender coming down ready to clog that lane as well. And he's seen this linebacker has seen that big gap between those the I think it's the center and the right guard, left guard, and he works inside to try to plug that. But they've also got this defensive tackle that's working inside the left tackle, and that leaves a gap between the tackle and I think the tight end on this side, and that leaves this gap open. So Allen feels that, and it's okay. I've actually got this gap out here to hit. I could cut this back, as most of these inside zone runs do get cut back. But I can see I've got these guys here ready to make that play, whereas I've got the gap here. So instead of cutting it back, he bounces that run and he gets out to the edge. And this is where you see he kind of lacks that long speed. He's not the amazing athlete to be the home run hitter. So he's not going to go and destroy and run away from guys and turn this into an 80-yard touchdown. But what he is going to do is he does have a little bit more shiftiness than you think he does. He's able to make that guy miss he can make one single cut, right? He's kind of a one-cut runner. He's not going to be a kind of guy that dances around, makes multiple cuts, and makes multiple guys misses. But he can make a guy miss with a single cut. And then he's going to be really hard to bring down. He's going to fight through contact, as we kind of seen, make it really hard to bring down and force guys to gang up and tackle him. So that was a nice feel of a zone run. This one is another nice feel of a zone run. We've got a few more. I'll just hit this one really quickly. So this is another nice feel of a zone run, and this is a situation where it's 2nd and 12 here for Penn State, and it's what an offensive coordinator would call a back on track run. As fans, we hate it. It's like, oh, we're running on the ball on 2nd and 12. Why are we running the ball on 2nd and 12? And it's like, just pass the ball. It's more efficient, and it's going to be more likely to set up a 3rd and manageable. But this is what we get is back on track. The 2nd and 12 run. It's a wide zone scheme, and what he's going to do a really nice job again is showing the feel of him running on a wide zone scheme. So we're going to have these defenders are going to penetrate through from the backside, and he's going to stop any potential chance of him trying to make this a cutback. He's going to have to bounce it because this defensive tackle is being really hard to cut off, and he breaks through. So Allen doesn't have any option to cut this run back, even if he wanted to, he has to try to bounce this to the edge. Now, as it so happens, they get some decent angles on these blocks. They get a nice effort on the edge here, and he's able to bounce it to the edge. And then we see that feel for that zone scheme where he gets to the edge. He's able to make that one cut. We talked about it. He's a guy that can make a guy miss with one cut. And this is what he does here. He's got this defender who's made the effort to work around an offensive lineman. He didn't want to get engaged and try to run over that guy. He had to work around him. And because he's had to work around him, he's got a bit of a bad angle, and you can see there's a gap emerging inside. So Allen makes that one cut, escapes through him, and works through before he gets tackled, picking up 5 yards on a back and track run to get them into 3rd and 7, which is somewhat manageable. So, did you want to jump in? I saw you hold your finger up a minute ago. Or was I?
Well, I guess I'm going through the thought process. It's clear that he has a pretty good patience as a runner. He's pretty good with the zone run as well, and falls forward. I'm curious what his role would potentially be, because we do see him as a short yardage back, but do you see him as a good pass protector as well? Is he pretty good? Does he offer any catching ability by any chance either? What have you noticed in regard to that?
I don't think he's going to be a 3rd down back. I think he does have some good pass protection ability. The willingness is there, and actually the technique's not bad either. I think the thing that he struggled with, and this could just be the protection schemes that they used, but I saw him frequently pass up a blitzer inside to go pick up a blitzer on the edge. And typically, NFL protection schemes will see a guy will want to protect the interior, which is the most direct route to the quarterback, and allow those guys to come free off the edge. Now, again, that could just be how Penn State taught their schemes, but there was I think there was 3 occasions where I saw him. They got an overload blitz from one side, and instead of picking up the linebacker or the safety blitzing inside, he'd work to the edge and pick up the safety or the corner blitzing off the edge. And when he went and picked up that guy, he actually did a good job, like technically sound, blocked the guy, did a good job with the block, with the willingness, no worries about like being run over and not being tough and kind of shying away from contact. Like he did a good job on that regard. He just picked up the wrong guy. So in theory, you could fix that mentally, or again, it could just be that was the schemes that they taught at Penn State, and that was how they were wanting those guys to be protected. But we don't really know. But in terms of pass catching ability, he didn't really offer a hell of a lot as a pass catcher, and so I don't think he'll be playing over Rachaad White on third down. I think he is. I think in terms of his role, it's going to be short yardage back. Obviously, is something he can come in and do right away. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, goal line, that kind of thing. And then I think he can be sort of what Chris Rodriguez was last year, where he kind of rotated with Bill on 1st and 2nd down in run situations. I think what we'll see is when you look at the Lions offense, which is what we're expecting Blau to kind of base his offense on. When you look at what the Lions offense was in 2023 when Gibbs was a rookie, I think David Montgomery was the lead running back and he had 220 carries, and Jahmyr Gibbs had something like 180 carries over the season. So there was a split there where Montgomery was kind of had like 40 or more carries on the season. They were fairly even, but Montgomery had a little bit more of the workload. Whereas in 2024, once Gibbs had kind of established himself as this more explosive threat and a reliable option, that flipped. So Gibbs became the guy that I think he got 230 carries in his second year, and Montgomery dropped down to like 180 carries. So I think what I'm anticipating them doing is that flip is going to happen in Washington, where Bill was kind of the second guy in Washington last year, the kind of change of pace, explosive guy. I think this year he's going to be the guy that they trust to be the lead guy, but they're going to rotate him out fairly regularly. And I think Allen can be the guy that comes in as the second guy and takes a bulk of the workload and give them kind of the same kind of, change of pace where they have a really explosive runner and a more of a thumper. But it's just going to be the change of the explosive guy is going to get more carries than the thumper, whereas typically you'd see the thumper get more and the change of pace would be the explosive guy. So I think that's kind of the role that I see him having.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I've got 2 more. Do you want to see these last 2?
Yeah, let's talk about.
Yeah.
No, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Right. So we've got 2 more. So this is some other skills that he has in his game. So I kind of talked about it before. He does have a little bit more shiftiness than he's given credit for. Now, he's not going to dance around. He's not going to be like super patient like we saw like a Kenneth Walker in the Super Bowl, where he was like dancing around behind the line of scrimmage, waiting for blocks and then make multiple jump cuts and make guys miss, right? He's not going to do that, but he can make a single defender miss. And so what you're going to see here is this defensive tackle is going to come free, burst through the line of scrimmage, come beat his block and get through. And Allen's going to take his carry and make a nice sharp cut to beat this defensive tackle who's wide open. So you can see he gets underneath the guard and he gets through and he's into the backfield. At this point, a lot of big thumping backs would be struggling to make this guy miss. He does a nice job making a decisive cut to get to the edge and run away from that defensive tackle before he can really get too close to him. And he gets into the open field. And then again, he shows that nice balance and that ability to fall forward to make the most of that run. So he's not going to make multiple guys miss, but he does have the ability he's a little bit more shifty than he's given credit for. He does have the ability to make a single sharp cut and make a single defender miss. And then this was just an example of him being a good running back, where he's able to understand how the run fit is happening and find the correct lane and show the patience and the ability to get into that lane. So what you're going to have here is a duo scheme where you're going to have as many double teams as possible. So in this case, it's going to be, I think it's the center and the left guard are going to double team this defensive tackle up to this linebacker. You're going to get the right tackle and the right guard double team this defensive tackle up to this linebacker. Allen's going to take the carry right up the middle, and the aiming point is this A gap between these guys that he's going to work off of what the linebackers do. So if the linebackers kind of fit in this gap, he's going to burst it back this way. If that linebacker and this linebacker are stunned this way, he's going to burst it out that way. And what's going to actually happen is you're going to see this linebacker is going to try to fit this outside gap, and this linebacker is going to try to fit outside, and that's going to leave this small gap inside the A gap where he's aiming for is going to be left open. Now it's going to be squeezed kind of shut by these two defensive tackles, but he does a really nice job making the correct read here. So as he takes this off, you can see that gap is there. These defensive tackles are trying to squeeze it shut, but the gap is open. This linebacker kind of makes a mistake, and this linebacker, one of these two linebackers makes a mistake. They kind of try to fill these outside gaps and leave this one open. Someone should be filling that A gap inside because that's the aiming point. But he runs up the middle, and you can see those linebackers are now in the wrong gaps, and this gap is still open, but it is kind of shut because the defensive tackles have tried to squeeze it shut. So he stays patient. He knows that that's where the gap is, and he does a really nice job getting skinny in that hole, finding his way through, and then he's off to the races. Now, again, he's not going to outrun a ton of people, but he's able to pick up a 49-yard gain here before being brought down. Now, again, Bill probably would have been able to take that to the house because he's a faster guy, and that would have been an 80-yard touchdown. But I don't think we should be complaining about 49-yard run when he's done a really nice job.
We'll take it.
Of finding the hole there. So yeah, I think that kind of summarizes what Allen is to me. I think he's a really good option on short yardage situations. I think he's got good power and good thumb. He has good traits in terms of being able to. He has a good feel for zone. I don't think it's an excellent feel for zone, but I think it's a good feel for zone, which should fit what Washington's trying to do. I think he's got that ability to fall forward and maximize every single run. Is going to be someone. Is going to be a guy that, you know, if it's blocked for 3, he'll get 4. If it's blocked for 5, he'll get 6. And you know, he's always going to fall forward and maximize those rushes and keep the team ahead of the chain. So I don't think he's going to be. I think a lot of people are thinking he's RB1 and he's going to come in and take the bulk of the workload, and Bill's going to be that kind of change of pace guy. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. Maybe it does, but I think it's going to be more kind of what I said, where they're going to give Bill the bulk of the carries, but he's going to get a fair amount, and he's going to be a reliable option that's going to keep them ahead of the chains when he's in there.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same mindset as you. I don't think he's going to challenge Bill as potentially the running back that gets the most carries. I think he's the epitome of Adam Peters selecting a certain player for a certain skill set. I feel like he wanted somebody to, hey, we don't have a short yardage back or in between the tackle kind of running back. I think it'll be a better fit. Just kind of like, we need that type of player for our offense. So let's get right now. So I think that's what's going to be his role this year, but we'll see. Mark, that was an excellent breakdown. I appreciate it. Thank you to the 424 people that watch us live. Definitely give us a follow and watch us every week. We're going to bring you guys timely news as the year goes on. Granted, guys, we're in the middle of May, so I don't know how timely that news is going to be, but we'll keep you up to date. You know, we have rookie training camp on Friday. If someone pops up and me and Mark are talking offline, we might find someone that might be kind of intriguing to look at. So definitely keep us and follow us there. Mark is always providing great content on Substack, so give him a follow there. I'm George Carmi, GCarmi21 on X. Have a great week. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.